video now, just to introduce neurodiversity. It's been created by one of my mentors, my personal mentors, Do It Solutions and 10 to 3.
Ever wondered if you are neurodiverse? This is not only a question for you, but for employers who ask this question, it's one of the surefire ways to send engagement, productivity, and inclusivity through the roof. To understand neurodiversity, it is helpful to imagine a bucket and some balls of different sizes and colours. Your brain is the bucket, no offence intended, and your different cognitive traits are the balls. The makeup of our traits is unique to us, which is why we all think, move, act, and communicate differently. Each trait is a ball of a specific colour and size. If you have lots of one type of trait, you will have lots of the same balls, in which case they pile up together. Sometimes, if there are enough balls, they can pile up and reach what is called a diagnostic threshold. When this threshold is crossed, someone is considered neurodivergent. It happens when there is more of one particular trait than you might expect to see, and means a person is recognised as having a condition. It could be ADHD, dyslexia, or something else. What the condition is will depend on the types of traits. So going back to neurodiversity, this neurodivergent threshold may not apply to you. You may have a variety of balls, but not a large number of any one type. Lots of cognitive traits, but nothing that would be recognised and given a name, even though these may be the same characteristics that in someone else are recognised. It's a question of degree. And some of the characteristics mean that people face challenges. Differences in the way they do some things may mean not fitting into what society considers normal or typical. For example, in the way they understand what's being said to them, or in how they focus on a task, which may contrast to what is normally expected. Whilst everyone is different, these differences are simply based on the mix of traits that most of us have. And so, to answer the question at the beginning of this video, we are all neurodiverse, but we're not all neurodivergent. Everyone.
So that was just a little intro that I like to give, because I don't know how many people on here are fully aware of neurodiversity, being neurodivergent, but I thought it's a really good way of explaining, and that's that black line that you saw, the draw on it is that the NHS invisible threshold to get the official diagnosis. Just because you haven't hit that line does not mean that you are not neurodivergent, but it's what is required to have the official, say, bit of paper. So neurodiversity, what is it? It is as simple as our brains and variety, and everyone is different. The difference between neurodiversity and neurodivergent: neurodiversity is usually used to describe a group of neurodivergent individuals. A study back in 2020 found that 80% of the population that they looked at were classed as neurotypical, and 20% were neurodiverse, or that should say neurodivergent. So some of the common conditions that you'll come across in day-to-day life. Dyslexia. This can cause problems with reading, writing, and spelling. Dyscalculia affects the ability to acquire arithmetical skills. Dyscalculic learners may have difficulty understanding simple number concepts, lack of intuitive grasp of numbers, have problems learning number facts and procedures. Autistic spectrum disorder. This is autism as we all really know it. It has just been put as a spectrum because there's many different conditions within it. So I have Asperger's, but there are other conditions there as well, and they're all grouped under the autism. and this is the way you think about and experience the world, and it's different to most people. It's considered spectrum because it's different for every single autistic person. We then have ADHD. It's an impairment of the brain's self-management system, which also affects executive function, which is working memory, planning, time management, organisation. ADHD is a spectrum as well and can present differently from person to person. It can present primarily as inattentive or hyperactive, impulse, or combined, which again, I had to do it properly and get both. Dysgraphia may cause challenges with a set of skills known as transcription. These skills like handwriting, typing, spelling allow us actually to produce writing. Tourette's. It's a condition that causes a person to make involuntary sounds and movements called tics. OCD. I was surprised when I first started researching this a couple of years ago that OCD, if it's diagnosed, is actually a neurodivergent condition. And it's classed as a condition that displays chronic and long-lasting, uncontrollable or reoccurring thoughts and behaviours that gives the urge to repeat over and over again. Misphonia, it's a sound trigger. They can trigger emotional or psychological responses that can be perceived as being unreasonable. So when the sound is said to drive someone crazy. A developmental language disorder. It's a type of speech, language and communication need whereby the individual may have difficulty talking and understanding a language. And my final one on here was dyspraxia. It affects the fine and gross motor coordination in children and adults and may affect speech. Obviously, there are so many more, but these are conditions that you could be sat next to somebody at work that they may have. You may never know about it if it doesn't have the visible or physical sort of traits that go with them. So when I was looking at the traits and the interactions, I found it really interesting to have a look at the different conditions and which traits interact with other conditions. So what I've done here is listed some very sort of typical traits for 6 different conditions and then joined them up where they were the same. So attention, inattention, and that could be linked then to sort of even just to hearing, or you've got social interactions with the autism and socializing with the DLD. No one condition or trait is linked just to one area. There are so many, and this is one of the reasons that diagnosis can be very, very hard. For me, for the first sort of year of my diagnosis journey, they were adamant I just had ADHD. I say just had ADHD. My condition was ADHD. Whereas, in fact, it eventually transpired that I'm primarily autistic with secondary ADHD. And that is just because of the way that the traits come across and can be seen in different ways. The difference for neurodivergent people is they may experience more in depth or the stronger traits of these. Now, along with having traits comes mental health challenges. For me, this is something that's really big to speak out about. I've had mental health problems all my life. They can all now be attributed to the autism and very slightly to the ADHD. And the fact that we've got Mental Health Week and it is so big, you know, worldwide and in every business now, I think it's really important to put it to the front. You know, the challenges that you can have: anxiety, stress, masking, overwhelming problem solving, relationship problems, emotional problems, depression. The list is endless. Everyone will have mental health challenges at some point in their life. Being neurodivergent in many cases can heighten these challenges. According to a Willis Towers Watson Global Benefits Survey, 70% of neurodivergent employees suffer with mental health issues. Many conditions can enhance what is already a struggle for a neurotypical person, thus leading to more severe reactions. In many adults, we mask our traits, whilst also battling other mental health issues that can push us to and beyond breaking point. For me, if it gets too much, I can go into a meltdown, which is where I'm at most risk of adverse reactions. Just for you, the guys that aren't sure about masking or may have heard of it every now and again, it's basically hiding the real part of ourselves in order to better fit in with the people around us, such as mimicking non-vocal behaviours, suppressing certain behaviours that are deemed to be weird or different, and developing social and complex scripts to get by in a basic social situation. It's worth remembering that all of these challenges are in every part of our lives. It's not just at work, or it's not just at home. But something that I didn't put on here that I keep meaning to do is putting on burnout. Burnout's defined as a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. So for me, I used to go into burnout in a job every six months or so, and then my fight or flight would kick in. So I'd either try and fight it for as long as I could, or quit the job. And there's no two ways about it. Now I've gone 8 months and there is absolutely no sign of it, but that's because I'm now in that safe situation. So then I wanted to show about how conditions and traits can clash. Some of them can make the most amazing person, but seeing as I wanted to do a warts and all, this is the internal fight. I've listed on here ADHD and some of my autistic traits. But then you'll see lots of multicoloured arrows. Yeah, I can't do it in one colour either. They've all got to be every shade of pink and purple I can find. And they go on with what is the conflicting side. So ADHD means I'm always searching for stimulation. Yet autistically, I'm exhausted mentally. I talk too much, but then I'm also frightened of saying something wrong. I make careless mistakes, but then I have fear of getting something wrong. These are just some of the things, and I found it really, really interesting to sit and list these and draw these arrows and actually see where it all comes into play. And this is one of the ways that I've actually learned to learn about myself. So it's exhausting trying to fight these clashes. And for me, I cannot influence which side's going to take precedent. I'm having to learn to live with the fact that I cannot control what comes out and when. There's no logic to it. There's no warning until I either start to shut down, my eyes go wide and I'm looking for the nearest exit, or I become talkative, hyperactive, and trying to find stimulation. Both of these conditions bring positive traits into my life, but they also cause massive problems. And God help you lot, or anybody that ever sees me when I go into a full meltdown or I'm absolutely 300 miles an hour. There's no control in it, really. So it really helped when my manager learned to pick up which side's coming out quite early on and can help to manage the negative side of these traits so that I don't hit meltdown. So he started to look at my facial expressions. Am I falling asleep? Well, that's fine, because it means I'm going to be quiet. Have my eyes gone big and wide? That means something's frightening me. Or, you know, am I not sitting still and I'm trying to have a conversation while in the kitchen doing something else, like baking or whatever I decide I'm going to do that day? I'm an all or nothing type of person. I'm impulsive, passionate, a complete control freak. I'm loyal, and I look at the world from a different view. which I can rotate to many different angles, and not just that of a neurotypical person. I'm compassionate, strategic, follow instructions, or, well, at least the laws to the letter. I see everything in black and white. Life is black and white. There's no interpretation. It's not grey. The glass is not half full or half empty. It's got half in it. So another part of the fight, I should say, is ADHD. I'm combined, and inattentive. So it means I've got a shorter attention span than a goldfish, and I'm far too easily distracted. Conflict, that to autism means I'm hyper-focused and find it hard to deviate from a subject. I lose things and appear, and I actually really am forgetful. I can't stick to tedious tasks. I constantly change tasks, and as I say, following instructions doesn't really happen. The hyper-focused side can be constantly fidgeting, excessive talking, inability to wait my turn, unable to concentrate, and again, that list goes on and on and on. There's so many of the Asperger's traits which are opposite to the ADHD, which means I'm not only exhausted and struggling with burnout, but I'm also searching for that next kick. Socially, I don't do well. I need time alone. I have fear of groups of people, fear of strangers, fears of strange places. Don't want people around me. Yet I want to be part of many working groups as I can, as many conference speaking opportunities as possible. My traits support my ability to read what's actually written when it comes to my job. As I say, I view life as black and white. It's right and wrong. This is why being in a career governed by legislation and driven by strict deadlines is so appropriate for me. Something else I did quite early on that my mentor taught me, and I've passed down to many businesses and any people that wanting to learn how to become a better manager for anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're neurodivergent, neurotypical, we're all different. And one of those was to write the struggles and strengths. I'm sat there in the middle between burning out, disorganised, impulsive, hyper-focused, works brilliantly under pressure. And some of these struggles have turned into strengths. So I am extremely lazy, but it means I will look for the most efficient way to work. It's learning how to turn some traits from a struggle to a strength. Not everything will change. Not everything can change, but it was certainly a good task to use in the early days. And it just shows how we are as people as well. If all your work colleagues did this, you could imagine how many different circles you'd end up with. So, as you all know, by now I'm quite vocal in neurodiversity, being neurodivergent. I've given talks to a few different businesses within the group of businesses that I currently work with, and been really, really lucky to have had a couple of articles now published. But the biggest question I always get asked at the beginning is what's helped me be successful. So I thought it'd be really handy to sit down and list them all. First and foremost, understanding each of my traits. If you don't understand them, how can you really understand yourself? On top of that, understanding my strengths and challenges in the workplace. Routines combined with a planner and a calendar that's shared in the team. So I know where I'm meant to be, what I'm meant to be doing and when. And this isn't just for meetings, this is for doing objective work, this is for responding to emails. Just having that time blocked out, because I don't say no. If somebody sees an empty bit in my calendar and wants me, it gets filled. Explain how to approach change with me. I don't like change, but I'm the biggest advocate for change, because there's always going to be a better and more efficient way of working. But if it's not my idea, don't come and tell me. So for me, I had to explain to my manager and those up above how to approach change with me. So I'm usually 100% up for a better way of working, but one thing that I cannot be is blindsided. And again, I don't think that's good for anybody. So if things are going to change, baby steps, and be open and honest and explain them. Having a buddy who recognises the signs of needing support before I get too bad that either I have to ask or I run. And this is something that's only happened in the last sort of year, should we say, of my working career, because I didn't know about it beforehand. But somebody who knows that if I turn around and say, oh, you've got 5 minutes, just fancy a chat, there's a reason I'm usually asking for a chat. And it's not because I want to tell them that I'm feeling really down or I can't cope with life. It's because I'm trying to forget the problem. And they know that if I'm asking them for 5 minutes, then there's a reason for it. And it's my way of asking for help without asking for help and without having that fear of failure. So being given the tools to find out what career suited my strengths rather than what I've been doing for 25 years. Certainly wouldn't advocate to anybody, or if you've been doing a job for so long, I'll just go and try something totally different. But I was lucky to have a mentor who is a massive neurodiversity champion and has dedicated her working life now to neurodiversity and HR. And she was the one who spent time going through what I was good at, what I couldn't put up with, and what bits I could be a bit flexible on. And that's how I've ended up in software development. Having a workplace mentor during the early discovery stages. So when I was first going through the trials of the NHS and the diagnosis process, which can take years. It's years of living in limbo, of still not knowing, but having somebody that understood why it was so important and why I was getting so frustrated. For me, getting my diagnosis was extremely important because I had to know if I was right or wrong. There was no in between with me. But I'll talk a bit more about that a little later on. Having a safe place, either physically or remotely, where I can be me. So if I'm having a really bad day and I was in an office, it was having somewhere that I could go and have a cry. Or if I was being asked to go to a conference, it was making sure that there was somewhere quiet, away from stimulants, that I could just get away and just be me again. My manager and colleagues asking what they can do to support me. Being open and honest with the business and the manager. Learning how to work with my traits and not fight them. I've always fought them because they weren't right or normal or acceptable, but actually they are, because I wouldn't be me, I wouldn't be the geek that I am without them. And finally, finding an employer, a manager and a team that understand, or at least trying to learn, my challenges and strengths, supporting me in not masking my quirks, but then also having to put up with some of the less desirable traits so that I don't have to mask, because I don't have boundaries. And whether you're the CEO or whether you're one of the apprentices, I'll speak to you exactly the same. And let's face it, not all CEOs are quite up to that. But they're learning. My lot are learning quicker than they thought they were going to at this rate. So through this journey, some of the questions that I've been asked. Should I get a diagnosis? Always down to you as a person. What will it achieve? Will it change anything? Can you actually cope with not hitting that target needed for the NHS diagnosis? Don't forget, it doesn't affect your employment rights. But having somebody say, sorry, you're not autistic, where actually they mean, sorry, you haven't hit this very high threshold of an invisible line tested on a teenage boy, that's what they're saying. Will medication help me? Most conditions I listed don't have any medication licensed, and those that do, it only works for some people. other than the other conditions such as bipolar schizophrenia. So my autism causes me more day-to-day issues, and it's not a condition that can be medicated. But when I wrote this, I was on the 4th type of ADHD med. Well, I'm actually on 6, and I finally found one that works for me. Still impulsive buying, but you know, we can't have everything at once. Should I tell my manager? Only you can really answer that. My personal opinion is absolutely, as how can they support you if they do not know? But I also speak to people regularly and actually work with them who either don't feel they can speak to their manager or don't want to because they want to keep it private. So that I'd say confide in someone else, such as HR or workplace mental health first aider. Many businesses are now setting up network and support groups and mentoring schemes as well. So it may be able to go there for some more help. If the business does not know, how can they help you? So where can I get some help if I'm struggling at work and home? And there are so many avenues. Firstly, you are not alone. You have your manager, your work colleagues. Most places have EAP, HR, never mind the numerous charities for mental health, financial help, employment support. Diagnosis routes-wise, your GP can guide you. As we know, it's a bit of a lottery, but keep pushing, you'll get that help. Always ask for help. So some of these questions have come from managers. I think someone in my team may be neurodivergent. Should I just ask? Some answers no, when all I keep saying is ask, ask, ask. There may be a number of reasons that they have not told you that they're diverse. In fact, they may not be. They may not even be self-identifying or diagnosed. They may just have traits. Just remember, we're all diverse. Adopt an open and confidential management culture so that if anyone wishes to open up, they will feel safe. So one of my team shows some neurodiverse traits. How can I help them? Whether someone is or isn't, it's always best to ask what you can do to support them to succeed in their tasks. Don't just go on, oh, what's up with you? What's the matter? Why aren't you thinking right? You may wish to do some research on methods that may help an individual, or reach out to others who have said in your business that they are happy to support managers with developing the skills that have, or people with similar traits. Be very mindful. Be very mindful. Some people are happy in their lives, diagnosis embrace their traits. Others don't want these traits known, or may not even realise or accept that they have them. Having a good basis, such as open communication, supportive culture, regular check-ins. There are so many things that we can't always mention them all on here. So how do we help the business to become more inclusive? This starts from every employee. Ask your manager for training. Actively promote traits. Be mindful when you're organising events or training or anything that's sort of out of the day-to-day norm. Just have some considerations. Just because somebody is really loud and confident isn't in the office doesn't mean that they're going to be that same person or be able to cope with going to a strange place, maybe with some more people or to an event. So it's just having to think about everything. Always starts with the culture. Be open and willing to adapt these. Ask colleagues that have spoken up about being neurodivergent for their real lived experiences. And finally, don't be judgmental. We're all different. And finally, on this, where can we get some more information, either personally or for businesses? So there's many places for support and training. There's a large LinkedIn community of businesses, individuals and groups. There are specialist training in HR businesses, such as Do It Solutions or Neuro Inclusive HR. Charities and specialist organisations such as ADHD 360 or autism.org.uk. They also have very useful information. I say here, and then there's us, but actually there's us. Those of us that have the confidence and are happy to put our lives and our traits and everything else on the line. Come and ask. So as a manager, what can you do? When writing this, a manager told me the best piece of advice they had ever been given was to adapt to support every person as an individual. One may need you to be blunt and strong, another may need you to be more careful and word things differently. And also, just if in doubt, particularly as you know, to those protected characteristics, do have a chat with your HR if you feel confident and you do want that little bit of extra support. But for me, I would say, first of all, ask. Ask your colleague to explain their strengths and challenges, what help and support they would like or need for them to succeed. And it doesn't matter whether it's succeeding in this job or somebody that you can mentor and for them to succeed in their future jobs. Recognise when they're needing time away from the stimulant. Time away from the stimulants to decompress, refocus, maybe pull out of a meltdown or an overload situation. Be cautious of feelings and trigger words that may cause distress, such as saying, "You are wrong." You could word it maybe as, "I see this as a different answer. Can I show you how I see it? And then I can also understand how you got to your answer." It's also just being nice, let's face it. It's not nice being told you're wrong. Allocate work to strengths rather than X or Y did it last time, so you have to do it this time. Understand your teams, to understand who has strengths. When I'm doing this training for payrollers, I'll say, well, if you've got somebody that's really good on legislation, give them the average holiday and the maternity because they've got some quite complex rules. Whereas if they're not so good at that, but they're really good at finding that one anomaly on a spreadsheet of 5,000 lines, then let them go and do the balancing. And just because they did it last week doesn't mean necessarily that they should be doing something different. But you should also look at giving them the support, seeing if you can help them a little bit further in their struggles. So regarding their struggles, when you do your PDRs, everybody says, right, I want you to do an X, Y, and Z in this year. I haven't come across anyone yet until now because I've done it. Well, my boss has done it because that's what I've advised. To pick a challenge or two that you wish to be supported on, developing and incorporating this into their objectives, making sure you've got clear and achievable targets. There will be no right and wrong, but if you can help that person, whether it be gain a little bit of confidence in something that they're actually really good at, or just integrating them into the team more, that's going to make a better employee in the long run. And again, manage them to their strengths. Don't pick out the failures, pick out the strengths and encourage them to take those strengths forwards. Let them help you. People are saying, well, I'm the manager. Why would I let them help me? They can actually help guide you on their journey of support and yours, and they may well have skills that can support you in your role. Again, use all the positives. Allow them a dedicated safe space. Should be defined by the person and could be a number of things, such as a darker area, a quiet area, somewhere they can totally unmask and let out their frustrations if they've got a particularly potty mouth maybe and it's not really conducive in the office, where they can go and shout or sit and cry, just somewhere safe that they won't get disturbed. Give clear guidance. Give clear guidance of what you require, when it's needed, how it's been determined and completed. Don't give them a huge list of tasks and either for them to complete. Just say, here, off you go. Pick some out. do it bit by bit and be very clear on the expected results. Manage yours and theirs expectations, being clear on what is expected and what the result is. Indulge yourself. Why not? Indulge yourself and your team on some training. Learn about the challenges and traits of different conditions. And finally, utilise a work passport. Or you can contact DWP Access to Work or Occupational Health Team for more detailed support options. So what I've done is just done a brief high-level outline of the employee cycle and things that could be done from day one just to make the whole process more inclusive. So from the recruitment, manager awareness of subtle changes in their review of candidates that would open up more interviews to neurodiverse people. So back to the old days where you had more than 2 jobs, we don't want to know you. Or somebody is really, really struggling and they put 1 or 2 word answers when you want them to write an essay on a whole load of different questions. Is there really any need? Why can't you do it over the phone? Manager training to understand conditions and adjustments for the interview process. Remember, you are required, if asked, to make reasonable adjustments for the interview process. So that might be, they might require it over Teams, or they might require their camera off while they're speaking. There's so many different things, but just open it up and ask at the very beginning. It's not all about nowadays needing a car parking space or a lift. Providing a description of the job rather than desirable and essentials. This is more like a day-to-day, a week-on-week, a month-on-month description of the duties that you'll be expected to perform and complete. Because if you look at the desirable and essentials, for me, I would never ever apply for a job that I could not do every single one of both. Desirable and essential to me were the same things, because if the potential employer listed it, it meant they wanted it. And it meant I was applying for jobs 2 or 3 brackets lower than where I was currently working, because I didn't have the confidence to step up. But if I'd seen the day-to-day jobs listed, and you know, a description of a week in the life of, say, like a payroll manager, I was like, yeah, I can do that, not a problem. Onboarding. So you found that perfect candidate. You got through all the glitches, the trials and tribulations of the recruitment process and your TA team. So they're going to start soon. So arrange some informal catch-ups before first day to make sure that they have everything they need to start. Getting to know the employee and finding out what support they need and what will help them, like quiet spaces, not going to a new place alone. Gentle team introductions and teaming up with a buddy or a mentor. A daily plan for every day for the first few weeks. Meet and greet for the main people that they will have initial interaction with, and making this on an informal basis, whether it be coffee breaks, and just not putting any pressure on. No proper work talk. Let them find out about those other people. And as I say, a work passport. I'm currently in the process of designing a work passport for somebody like me, because I haven't found any out there that really fit neurodiverse conditions. They're more for disability. I'm actually disabled as well, so I can put half of it on I need X, Y, and Z, but there isn't the levels of how to communicate with me. If you've got a problem, how to deal with it. The dreaded PDRs. These used to have me in tears for weeks running up to them. And I still don't like them, but we're not going to get away from them, let's face it. So identifying areas of strengths and utilise their additional skills within the role and team. Just because it's not part of their day-to-day job does not mean that they've not got some extra skills that they can bring in, or could even support other teams or merge the team they're in to, you know, another department. So I used to link between HR and payroll and finance, because I started in finance and being a legislation geek, employment law and all that sort of stuff is also quite fun for me. So I was that link. So utilise their extra skills. Agree check-ins, reviewing procedures in advance and ensure that they are followed. Identify areas that the employees request more support in, whether it be in core skills such as communication and mentoring, or training support for their roles. And never ambush or put surprise meetings or chats in. Stick with the regular check-ins, and if something's really important, just say nothing to worry about. Could you spare 5 minutes? I could do with some support. Think of the way you word it. So within that, you've then got your developments, set achievable goals with agreed timeframes and ensuring there is adequate support. Utilise your neurodiversity in key projects. Don't sideline them just because somebody can't sit down, or they have a verbal tic, which means that they're swearing a lot, or they have to wear noise cancelling headphones. Always ask, what do you need? What extra support can be given? How can we help you achieve your goals? And retention. Understand your team, what and how to engage and motivate them. Ensure the culture is open, supportive and inclusive. Keep the environment stable, and if change has to happen, engage the team early on. So the example here was if their business has decided to hot desk or you're moving office, have consideration for people that will find that challenging. So the fun bit, for me, the law. We are protected under the Equalities Act 2010. You're disabled under the Equalities Act 2010 if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. So this is over 12 months, and substantial means more than, as it says here, minor or trivial. These can be things like getting dressed, they could be things like being able to walk, it could be communication, it could be completing tasks. There's so many different traits that would come under this, and you do not have to have a formal diagnosis to come under the Equalities Act. If you display the traits, if you disclose that you identify as, and this is one of the few times that I'll use that woke word, but you will identify as being neurodivergent. Definition of disability from section 6 is you have a physical or mental impairment. Your impairment has a substantial and long-term effect on your ability to do normal day-to-day activities. An impairment doesn't have to be diagnosed and doesn't have to have a medical condition attached to it. So if you're suffering from long-term stress, you might have mental impairment, like difficulty concentrating. Physical impairment might be extreme tiredness and difficulty in sleeping. You don't have to have a diagnosis, but you still need medical evidence to show your impairment has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on your ability, day-to-day activities. All this means is if for some horrific reason you had to go to tribunal, they'd need your GP records and see that you have seen them. So for me, over the years, it started off with mental health to the extent that I got to rock bottom and tried, thank goodness, the exit successfully because I didn't want to be here anymore. That would have classed me in there anyway. The fact that I now have a condition that is the trigger for it just makes it a little easier for me personally. The impairment also doesn't have to stop you doing anything as long as it makes it harder. It might cause you pain. It might mean a task takes a longer time, or you can't do an activity more than once. So an example from one of the websites is Joe's autistic. He finds the world overwhelming, and this causes him considerable anxiety. He also has difficulty communicating and interacting with other people. Joe doesn't think he is disabled as he's not physically impaired. However, he has an impairment because of the effects of the condition. It means he can't do some day-to-day activities like going to the shops alone and socialising. He is disabled under the Equalities Act. Just remember though, if you don't tell the business you have protected conditions or traits, how can they know to offer adjustments and any other support needs you may have? So the law also requires your companies, your employers to make reasonable adjustments. Employers are required to make reasonable adjustments to any element of the job which place a disabled person at a substantial disadvantage compared to a non-disabled person. The employer has the responsibility to make these adjustments, and recent court cases have proved that the employee does not necessarily have to ask for them if the employer notices the employee struggling. So if you are noticing somebody struggling, again, ask, what can we do to help? What can we do to support? So, reasonable adjustments. You could put this under your ESG policy. Many businesses have the ESG policy, which is your environmental, social, and governance. But what they need to do is start engagement from the bottom up. Without managers, team leaders, colleagues buying into it, no business can be truly neuro-inclusive. I personally would steer clear from any business which promotes themselves as being neuro-inclusive if the culture throughout didn't fit the needs of a neurodivergent person. The culture needs to be re-evaluated and policies and procedures redesigned. Businesses can adopt a hot desk policy. They should be really looking at the constraints this could and would place on a neurodivergent colleague. Some may have lighting sensory restrictions, others may have noise restrictions. So within that, reasonable adjustments, A, it's in the law, and B, without it, how are you a responsible employer? Some of them could be noise cancelling headphones with, sorry, that should be with or without background noise within them. Some people can't concentrate without having like a white noise, background noise. Other people are noise sensitive. Autistic people particularly have sensitivities to, say, noise or light. They're just not seeing the social norm. It's like, how can you work in a team effectively if you've got headphones on? Because it's the modern day, and headphones, you can still hear what goes on around you. Dedicated desk. This could be for a number of reasons. It could be because the person is light sensitive. It could be because they're sound sensitive but don't want to wear headphones. It could be because they can't cope with having other people around them, so need the corner desk. It could be that they get far too distracted and don't sit still and talk for the world if they're stuck right in the middle of an office. Give them that dedicated desk. Sit-stand desk. I have one, so if I get really, really frustrated, I can go up, down, up, down, up, down every 5 minutes. I mean, it's actually for a disability as well, physical disability. But people who say are hyperactive may find it easier to be standing up and stand there. They can move from one leg to another, fidget more easily while standing up. Time out for therapy appointments. I put paid at the end. So obviously you have to allow reasonable time off for medical appointments, but these could be therapy appointments. They're not necessarily seeing mainstream medical practitioners, but they may be, say, going for reflexology or acupuncture or many other things that just help them be able to cope with life a little bit better. Software, I expect you guys know more about the software out there than I do. But things like Mind Map, I used that to build that fabulous diagram back at the beginning. Text audio, you can also get audio that speeds up speaking, it's sort of like a time and a half or double time if you want to get listened through it really quick. Some people find that actually helps them concentrate better. You can also get a software where you can put your text in and it bolds the first 3 letters of every word. So instead of reading word one and then the last word in the sentence, your eyes automatically read each one. Changes to communication methods. For me, email is not good because I take what is written very personally. I read it in an angry voice. Just pick up the phone. Other people would go, yes, great, give me a Teams call, but I won't have my camera on. It doesn't have to be just one way. As mentioned earlier, adjusted lighting. Those wonderful bright white lights you get in an office might be quite painful for somebody. Time away from the desk after long periods of concentration. It could be after short periods of concentration. One method that I was taught to be able to start writing an article when I'd got writer's block was to sit there for 5 minutes and type anything. And it could literally be the word anything 300 times. And then go and do something, go and sweep the floor, go and speak to somebody, just do something away from the desk for 5 minutes, then back again. By the end of it, I'd have an article. But it's giving them that break, particularly if they've sat down really, really quietly for a long period of time, then just need to get out. Only dealing with queries from certain sources, i.e. not the phone. Some people really struggle with the phone, or if they have Tourette's, they may not be classed as being clear on the phone. But we have so many different ways of raising queries now. We have the Zendesk type things, we have email, we have people coming in to actually speak to you. It doesn't have to be answering the phone. So I was thinking about this afternoon. It's all well and good me saying to everybody all about the laws, but there's got to be other people out there. I'm not the only noisy one. So how can you help if you're neurodivergent? These are just some of the thoughts I thought you could take back to your workplace. Be open and honest, first of all. If you're able to, share your experience with others. Should just mention that I do know a lot of neurodivergent people and none of them would do this. And they were like, I personally, I'm like, well, I'll do it because it means I'm helping someone else. And that's where I get my satisfaction from. But for them, it's too personal. So this is only if you feel you can, or try it, try little bites. It doesn't have to be to a group of strangers. In fact, it's easier to a group of strangers than it is to your work colleagues, I found. Ensure your manager knows about and understands your strengths and struggles. Even if you need to sit them down with 2 circles, one with your strengths, one with your struggles, or, you know, when you're deciding should you buy something, can you weigh up the pros and cons, and you do a list for each. Write them down. Educate the business in being neurodivergent and what they can do to help you. As I said, change comes from the bottom up. If you don't change the culture, no business is ever going to be truly inclusive. So it's up to you and I, to all of us, to make those changes, not just our directors and our board saying X, Y, and Z. Because let's face it, they can say what they want. They're not the people doing the day-to-day jobs. Offer to mentor a colleague, whether they be new or they're new or early in their journey. You might not want to stand and shout out, but you might go, actually, I won't mind just helping somebody, but I want to do it on the quiet. Encourage the business to set up a community network. Encourage the business to do specific neurodiversity training. Sign up to be a mental health first aider, because there is nothing worse when you're having a real bad time mental health and you've got somebody who's never ever had that to say, oh, I know how you feel, but you may well do, so why can't you do that? So we're about at the end. Summary of final thoughts for everyone. About managers, team leaders, team members buying into and being proactive channels for change, no business will ever be truly neuro-inclusive. Always ask the employees, never assume, never just take one person's experience, never bring in a specialist to define neurodiversity. Education and training, or just start the conversation. So many of us are more than happy to stay hidden, but there are others and those out there who are happy to have their voices heard. Might take a bit of digging, but have a team of mentors with real lived experience to support colleagues and allow them time in their daily job to do this. And it doesn't just have to be colleagues that are going through the diagnosis, it could be their children or their loved one. It's a hard time for everybody else around as well. Reevaluate the culture behind the scenes. I'd never apply for a job with neuro-inclusive. Neurodiverse in this sense or not, everyone is different, so many of these changes will support everyone. Having a safe space and away from stimulants. Celebrate our quirks. Don't have the unwritten attitude that employees must mask their true selves. And allow the flexibility we need for us to thrive. That's it. Thank you very much for those of you that have actually stayed awake to listen to it.